Some time ago, we had released a video talking about why Luke Skywalker agreed to be exiled by the New Republic, or rather, the Galactic Alliance, as it would be called by that point in history. In the Fate of the Jedi novels during the Terror of Abeloth, a former Imperial who had become the Alliance Chief of State named Daala would issue a lawsuit against Luke. As we talked about in the Holocron, the two had a meeting where Daala revealed her concerns and why she believed that the Jedi was unlawful for the galaxy. We ended that story by alluding to the fact that after Luke left, things would only get worse for the Jedi and the rest of the inhabitants of the galaxy, as friction would finally come to a boiling point. Following this, Daala would essentially launch an anti-Jedi political campaign and seemingly do everything she could to hinder their authority. Well, the situation would continue to escalate until the climax of the issue came when Daala decides to make an overtly aggressive move against the Jedi Order, literally laying siege to the Jedi Temple. All while Grandmaster Luke was off fighting his final battle with Abeloth, the Jedi were left to fend for themselves under the leadership of a cowardly and ineffective temporary Grandmaster. And in today's Holocron, we are going to talk about the dramatic event wherein the Jedi were forced to fight against the very government that they protected. This time, without a Sith Lord behind the scenes pulling any strings. This was the galaxy turning against the Jedi in its purest form. A march on the Jedi Temple. The prelude to the temple siege comes with Abeloth herself, one of the main abilities that was influencing the minds of specific Jedi from Abeloth in order to induce a psychosis, one which caused them to not only be solely loyal to her, but caused them to believe that everyone around them was an imposter. This made the afflicted Jedi violent towards anyone they believed to be an imposter, and thus a danger to everyone. This whole situation is what caused Luke to be exiled in the first place. And unfortunately, the cases of Jedi psychosis had been rising since the Grandmaster had left. The Galactic Alliance, under Chief Daala's command, was trying to arrest and incarcerate all of these Jedi outright. But of course, the Jedi Order itself couldn't allow that, as they knew the afflicted knights were not in control of their minds. Over the course of the past few months, tensions were heating up between the Jedi and the Alliance. More and more, the Jedi's rights and privacy were being taken away by Daala, and things were boiling to a head when two more Jedi Knights by the name of Sotheus Sar and Turi Ultimate both came down with the psychosis in view of the public. The media was all over the story, and Daala had enough evidence demanding the Jedi to release their two members to the Galactic Alliance for punishment. But the Order were also at their wits' end with Daala, and so they sheltered the psychotic Jedi in the temple away, attempting to find a way to cure them and to stall for time. Meanwhile, the Jedi were setting up a team of Stealth X starfighters to go and help Grandmaster Luke, who was struggling against Sith forces, all while trying to hold back tensions with the Galactic Alliance. The Jedi caught between a rock and a hard place. Frustrated by the Order's lack of cooperation, Daala would then enlist the aid of a massive Mandalorian strike force led by a man named Belloc Rawl. The Mandalorians would then launch a full-scale raid on the Jedi Temple, crippling their communications and coordination before setting up a blockade. This cut off all escape routes for the Jedi, jammed all transmissions outside of the temple, and kept the supplies from entering. The Jedi tried their best to establish contact with the Mandalorians for several hours following the incident, but the Mandalorians refused to respond in an effort to instill fear and unease in the Jedi Order and the Temple of Coruscant. Finally, the Mandalorian Rawl introduced himself to the Jedi and stated the terms of his mission, threatening consequences if the Jedi did not turn over the two that had gone into a psychosis within 36 hours, to be officially prosecuted and held responsible by the Galactic Alliance. In an effort to establish some line of communication, the Jedi Council would send out a diplomat to attempt to negotiate with the Mandalorians. But once he heard her reasoning for approaching, the Mandalorian shot her point blank, murdering her instantly on the steps of the Jedi Temple. The Mandalorian Rawl then said that the same would happen to any Jedi except for Tsar and Ultimate, the two Jedi that he was after, and that they now had 24 hours before the Mandalorians destroyed the temple and massacred every Jedi within. Soon following, the temporary Grand Master, Kent Hamner, was contacted by the Chief of the Navy by the name of Nek Bawatu, who revealed that recordings made by the Mandalorians during their earlier raid on the temple had showed evidence of the Stealth X strike team preparing for an attack. Hamner quickly told the chief that the strike was not aimed at Daala or the Galactic Alliance, and that the Jedi were not moving against them as a military force, but rather a mutual enemy in the Sith. Buatu told Hamner that Daala did not yet know of the situation, and added that if the chief of state found out, it would mean all-out war. The Navy chief then offered his assistance in dealing with Daala, suggesting that if the Jedi Order delayed the launch until he gave them the go-ahead, that he could ensure that they had the complete cooperation of the Galactic Alliance's Navy. Unfortunately, that go-ahead would never come, because shortly after this, Buatu was put in a coma following an assassination attempt. While all of this was occurring, the media of Coruscant was capturing it all and making sure to paint Daala in a pretty negative light, the public finally turning against their chief of state and allying with the Jedi. Public opinion was beginning to change in the Jedi Order's favor, and all along with this, Leia had found a way to sneak supplies into the Jedi Temple, tying small amounts of it to the backs of rodents, and then having them use the tunnels beneath the temple to deliver the goods. This is a profound moment in the lore, because normally it is the public that is turning their back on their protectors in the Jedi. But here finally, the public of the galaxy are beginning to see the truth of their protectors, the pure and the false. At long last, Grandmaster Luke finally defeated Abeloth in their climactic battle, ending her reign of tyranny, and freeing all the afflicted Jedi of the Psychosis. Once the two Jedi in the Order's charge were cured, it would be Han Solo who held a tense summit with Daala, where he presented the cured Jedi to her. Daala refused to believe that the Jedi had been cured at all, going so far as to accuse the Jedi of trickery by means of Force illusions, or even plastic surgery. But finally, Daala relented to having them inspected right then and there by a medical professional, who revealed that they had been completely cured. However, she refused to allow the Jedi that she had arrested to be set free until they knew more. Meanwhile, the Jedi Council had decided that it was now or never to launch the Stealth X fighters in order to help Grandmaster Luke, with temporary Grandmaster Hamner still waiting for the go-ahead that would never arrive. He tried his best though in order to stall, and heavily advised against the attack. However, the rest of the council had grown tired of his ineffectual leadership, and it was at this moment that Han, who had previously learned about Hamner's deal with Buatu, suggested that he tell the council about his communications with the Navy leader. Upon hearing this, the Jedi High Council was outraged by him, as they were infuriated with the fact that he had kept this secret for so long, jeopardizing the life of the true Grand Master. And because of this, the council voted that Hamner be removed from his position of Grand Master and confined to his quarters, pending consequence. The council would then vote in Saba Sabatine, a good friend of Luke Skywalker's, as the new acting Grand Master, and they went to immediately launch the fighters. Terrified of a war between the Jedi and the Galactic Alliance, the former Grand Master Hamner escaped his quarters and went to try and stop the launch of the Stealth X's. He was intercepted though by Saba, and the two entered into a fierce duel on the rooftop of the Jedi Temple. During the launch, the former Grandmaster Hamner would panic and would eventually slip and fall off of the catwalk to his unfortunate demise. Grandmaster Sabatine was devastated that she wasn't able to save him, but after conferring with the rest of the High Council, they all agreed that Natasi Daala needed to be removed from the office in order to keep a war from the Jedi from occurring. In a dramatic series of events, the Jedi would stage a coup against the government and arrest Daala for her aggressive action, instating a new chief of state, a senator who was a Jedi sympathizer. Their first course of action was lifting the exile of Luke Skywalker, and when Luke returned, Sabatine would immediately grant him the title of the official Grand Master. But although all was well now, Luke was extremely disturbed by the events that had transpired on Coruscant, and would decree that it was not safe for the Jedi Temple or the Jedi to remain there, and an era of the Jedi would officially come to an end, as Luke commanded that the Jedi should move to their ancient homeworld of Ossus, reclaiming the world in the name of the Jedi. And that, my friends, was the story of the Siege of the Jedi Temple, and how the Jedi almost went to war with the Galactic Alliance. The Mandalorian commander Raal took many cruel and drastic actions that Daala is ultimately responsible for. While a Jedi-led coup of the government is the worst-case scenario, it was actually warranted here in our opinion. On a separate note, the temporary Grandmaster Canthamner was not a bad guy either in the slightest. He opposed Daala just as much as anyone else, and was devastated when Luke was exiled. He was simply not prepared at all to be the Grand Master. It wasn't as if he was completely a puppet figure for Daala, but he was far too reluctant to take the necessary action in order to ensure fair treatment of the rest of the Jedi. Some might even say that his actions and attitude during the siege itself were downright shameful. Honestly though, could you imagine if this sort of thing happened in the Clone Wars and with that era of Jedi? If the Mandalorians pulled this on them and attempted to take over the Jedi Temple, they would be met with extreme force. The difference with Luke's order isn't that they're weaker than the Clone Wars Jedi, they're just more compassionate, and Luke has learned a great deal in the construction of his order. They cared about the Galactic Alliance and didn't want to make themselves out to be the enemies or to start a war. As a result, they suffered cruel treatment and even lost one of their own trying to negotiate peacefully. But now my friends, tell us what you think about this intriguing story and the war that almost occurred between the Jedi and the Galactic Alliance. What do you think of the government that replaced the Empire? And what do you think of Jedi treatment even without Palpatine at the helm? As always my friends, thank you so much for watching the video and the channel today, and may the Force be with you.